Welcome to a special episode of Arcade USA. This week's episode, I'm going to be visiting 3 different arcades located in people's homes. The first arcade is by Rob. He has a small collection. Then the next arcade will be by Mike. His arcade is rather large. He also displays arcade games at MagFest every year. He's also into restoring the video games as well. And then lastly, the arcade of my buddy Scott, who's a co-host of the Retro Gaming Roundup podcast. He has a very nice arcade actually set up with black lights and all kinds of neat little features in his arcade. So enjoy the episode, and thanks for watching it. Well, I'm here at the home arcade of Rob Guth, his own little personal arcade. One of the things we want to show is if you don't think you have room for a home arcade, what Mr. Guth has here shows that you can have something in any kind of space you have to play any kind of your favorite games. So what got you started in collecting arcade games?
Well, my neighbor Scott, who's part of Retro Gaming Roundup, told me that the games are relatively cheap to buy. Come to find out, they aren't that hard to buy, or they're not that hard to work on either. So that's what got me started, and from there it turned into more than one game.
So what game did you play early on that really got you hooked into the arcade games, that made you decide, hey, you know, I want one of these in my house?
Probably the big 4-player, what is it? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the big 4-player one, the arcade game. That game, I just remember playing to that game. As soon as I'd walk up to it, I'd just play it all day. Now, I remember playing Tekken and all that stuff, but Ninja Turtles was the game.
Where do you find most of your games? You find them on Craigslist, or you go to some of the auctions with Scott or other people? Or?
Actually, 2 of the games that I have here, including the Play Choice 10, I got from one of his buddies. This I got where did I get it from?
I got it from Randy.
From Randy in Manassas. And I got it for $50. It didn't work when we got it, and Scott helped me fix it, and now it works.
So you try to do all your own maintenance on your games and everything? Or?
If I can't, I ask Scott to do it. You know, because I don't know it all, and if I can't find it online or I can't do it myself, I have Scott help me.
So of the games you've collected so far, which one is your favorite that you have?
It would have to be the Dart Machine. It's the most entertaining, and it's from 1987, I believe, and it's just a lot of fun to play.
Is there any other kind of arcade games that you're interested in, or maybe you might think about buying in the future to replace something?
The only other thing that I want is Scott's Family Guy Pinball. That's the only other thing I'm missing right now. I just don't have the money to buy it, but that's the only thing I really, really want. Past that, nothing really else. You know, I like to keep it small. I like to keep the games looking like they've been used, like they were in the arcade. And like I said, it's just the only one I'd want would be a Family Guy Pinball.
So here's one of Rob's Pac-Man cocktail machines. What gets you interested in picking up one of these?
Well, first of all, it's one of the iconic games. It's one of the games that everybody has to own. If you ever have an arcade, Pac-Man's one of the games to have. I also remember going to the local pizza store by my house and actually playing on a cabinet such as this. I really, really love this game.
And I see over here you've got yourself a slot machine. What made you decide to get a slot machine?
I actually got that originally for my mom, and she never played it. I was actually out in our garage, which all the neighbors would come over, and nobody really played it. That was actually my first ever arcade machine that I ever got. I actually got it for free. My cousin gave it to me, and from there it just escalated.
Well, free is good.
Free is great.
And then here's your Play Choice 10.
Yes, sir. And let me go to the games. I got Duck Hunt. I got all the majors for anything for Nintendo. The original Mario Brothers, Duck Hunt, Super Mario Brothers 1, 2, and 3, Dr. Mario, Contra, Castlevania, Metroid, and of course TMNT.
And then you got yourself a Jack-in-the-Box pinball.
Yep. As far as I know, it's all original. I picked this up from one of Scott's friends. Actually, he was moving and wanted to get rid of it, and I actually bought it for $50. It wasn't working when I got it, and Scott helped me clean up the boards and everything, and it now works perfectly.
And this is an electrical mechanical pinball?
Yes, sir.
Cool.
Now let's move on to Mike's Arcade.
I'm in the home arcade of Mike Green. Tell us about yourself a little bit, Mike. What got you started in this business?
What kind of got me started in the arcade was my neighbor. Initially, I didn't even know it was possible to even own these arcades, and my neighbor had quite a few in his collection himself, Scott Schreiber from RetroGaming.com. And what I noticed was the nostalgia feeling that I got when I went into his home and I saw the arcade machines, and it really brought me back to my childhood. I remember playing these games before I even, 6, 7, 8 years old, before, I can even remember half of the games that were out there during that time frame. And just fell in love with it, and collecting arcades just brings me back into that.
What was the first arcade game you remember playing that really got you kind of hooked with the arcade scene?
I would have to say Pac-Man was probably the one that got me. Yeah, that's one that usually gets everybody, right? So yeah, that was definitely the one that hooked me as a child and had me coming back constantly to try to get further and further.
What was your favorite arcade game?
Wow, there are so many. My favorite would have to be Street Fighter. When I was a little bit older in the military, the Street Fighter scene was starting to come online, and before that point, I wasn't really that good at arcades. But with the Street Fighter games, I really got the knack of it, and I could drop a quarter and play for an hour. So off of $1, I could play for 2 hours with people dropping quarters in and doing the verses, and then you go back into the game. And for some reason, I really took on to that.
What got you interested in actually trying to collect the games and own them now?
Well, I had a friend, Buffet. He's on the KLOV.com, and he does a lot of help with a lot of the collectors in the area. And he actually offered to allow me to keep some at my home, to store some at my home to kind of help him out, because he was running out of space for his own games. What I found was I really enjoyed working on them. Even more than playing them was working on them. And I'm not sure what it is, if it's the ability to use a lot of my talents, which is electronics and woodworking, and it gets me into all of that. But I really enjoy the concentration that it takes. One-on-one with the game, it's almost a competition in itself to restore the games, and I actually enjoy restoring them more than I enjoy playing them, which is kind of odd for most people.
So I guess now you're actually developing a business on buying and restoring games and reselling them?
Yes, I haven't done a whole lot in flipping games. Most of them turns into a bulk buy, and when I get the opportunity to get a game that I really want and it's attached to one that I'm not so big on, but maybe it's a big collectible game, then yeah, I go for that opportunity. One perfect example is Tron. Just recently I was able to sell one of those, and I made a good profit, and it's going right back into a Qbert, so always moving forward with some momentum in that.
Where do you find most of your games that you actually get a hold of?
A lot of my games, I probably purchased about 10 or 15 of the games from local warehouses, Coin Op Warehouse in Hagerstown, Maryland, and Backroom Games in Manassas. And you can really find them for great deals. What I found is you get them in a condition that needs to be restored. You pay $100, $200-$300, and you've got a game that you want, and then you get to work with it and kind of make it your own. I guess that's the way I feel about it. If it needs a little side art, needs some paint, the board needs repair, to me that's actually owning the machine instead of just purchasing the machine.
What was the first game you picked up in your collection?
The first game I picked up in my collection was this Afterburner, and I just remember during the Top Gun craze, the F-14s and flying, everyone was just mad about the whole idea of flight, and as a kid it just really attracted me and brought me into the arcade scene as a teen, and that's why I felt like I really needed this one first.
So from this one, how many do you think you have now in your collection?
Ooh, now I have working 30, and I have about 6 or 7 projects still waiting in the wings to come back to life, and kind of starting to slow down a little bit so I can catch up with these restores and get back online. So yeah.
And you take a few of these games to the MagFest every year, is that correct?
That is correct. Most of the machines that are actually up and working I take out with me. A few of them that I've invested a lot of time and restoration in, like Space Invaders and things like that, I keep at the house, because I just don't want a lot of people kicking and punching and, you know, jamming on the controls, that kind of thing. So
So you got a few you like to hold back that are kind of special.
exactly, absolutely. But part of owning the games and putting so much effort into restoring them is sharing them. It's the arcade parties. It's, you know, being able to share some advice with other people, and MagFest is a big part of that. You get to really see a lot of people get a chance to enjoy the games that you've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into. So,
What's your most unique game you think you have here that's very rare or unique?
wow, that's a tough one. I would say for the most unique game that I have, it would be the Street Fighter the movie. Not many people enjoy the play style of it. I found that I don't care as much for the play style as I had hoped I would. Rare games, it would be a toss-up between my Sinistar, which I just picked up recently, and the Street Fighter 3 Third Impact that I have over here behind myself as well. Those are typically some of the more rare games that you actually find in people's homes. And I don't stick to one era. You know, I have some pre-80s, I have 80s, and I even go into the 90s with the Street Fighter games. So I enjoy kind of going across the board.
A whole diversity of different type of games.
Exactly. And what I find as well is when you have people come over to the home to the arcade parties, they enjoy that variety. You know, if they bring their kids over, their kids are going to gravitate more towards the 90s games, more towards the console games than they will towards, you know, outside of that.
Have you ever thought about offering your restoration services to other people that can contact you? Or?
I have thought about it, and I really would love to get into that. Right now, I have so much invested in my own games that I have a hard time finding time, but absolutely, that'd be something that I would be interested in, because I know there's a lot of people that aren't as good with electronics, or maybe they're not as good with woodworking. And I've done some of that with a few people where I've said, okay, sure, I'll restore this cabinet, and then we make a deal for a trade for another cabinet. So sometimes it's in that way that I do offer restoration towards people.
Mike's Arcade also has a lot of hand-drawn and painted pictures along the wall as well. Who did these pictures, Mike?
I did these myself. I use some black light reactive paint. As you can see, it really just pops with the black lights themselves. Initially, this was my console area of my arcade, which has been since moved to another location, so that's why you see the Xbox and Nintendo style arcade drawings up on the walls. But I do enjoy making these as well. It's the whole artistic part of the arcading, and I really believe it brings the arcade to life instead of just having arcade machines.
One of the games Mike has in his collection here is called Jungle King. Can you tell us a little history about this game and how it turned into Jungle Hunt?
Yeah, so a little background on the game actually is Jungle King used to be one of my favorites when I was a kid, and I remember being in an Aladdin's castle and they'd have a sheet of games for sale, and I remember seeing Jungle King for sale for $300, and as a kid I was thinking, man, that's a lot of money, but it's not that far away that you could actually purchase it. So I looked for a while to find the Jungle King, and they can be somewhat hard to find. This one I found in good condition. The Jungle King is somewhat rare because in the United States when it was released, Jungle King used the likeness of Tarzan with the Tarzan yell. And Edgar Burl Rice's estate didn't like that, so they actually sued Taito to get money back for using the likeness of Tarzan. So in the United States, they had to pull back all the Jungle King games and replace them with the Jungle Hunt. And it was unfortunate because the artwork on the Jungle King is really beautiful. And the artwork on the Jungle Hunt, they really toned down and went with a very generic just pinstriping and lettering into the wording. So where Jungle King uses Tarzan, Jungle Hunt simply uses a jungle-style character, almost like a Crocodile Dundee in khakis with a helmet. But the Jungle King is much more fun. You got the Tarzan yell right at the beginning. You got Tarzan. It really wraps up the whole game.
The next arcade we'll be visiting is owned by Scott. Scott is a co-host of the Retro Gaming Roundup.com podcast, a monthly podcast on all things retro game related. So let's check out his arcade and see what kind of neat stuff he has.
Hello, Retro Gaming Roundup. Remember to listen every month.
Okay, I'm in Scott's arcade. Scott Schreiber from the Retro Gaming Roundup.com podcast. What got you started in collecting arcade games?
Shit, the possibility I could own one. Yeah, for me as a kid, we grew up in the arcade like every other person our generation. And it was always, looking into the coin door and the pinball, just wanting to own one of these. And, when you're, out of 9, 10, 12, whatever, you ask the change attendant, hey, what do these things cost? You guys sell these? And he's like, oh, $800, which is somewhat of an impossibility at that age. Then, you're a teenager, you discover girls, and then you forget about this stuff for a while. And then you're young and poor and in college and the army and all. So it wasn't until after I was dispensed with all the business of paying my dues that I got to thinking, I never followed up on that arcade thing, did I? So I just got the bug, and I said, I could own one of these. And that's how it always starts with one. And I think the first thing I did is I bought a cabinet and then built a multi-machine. This is before Maine. So it was running another multiple, I think it was Retrocade or something like that. And then it just began, I want a dedicated machine. I want that dedicated machine and that dedicated machine. And then once I got a true sense for the history of it, I got into like these guys you see behind you. This is the first coin-operated, commercial video game ever made, computer space. It preceded its older brother here, or younger brother, Pong, by 1 year. And it was designed by the same group of guys. So these two behind me, this is where it all began. These were the first two commercially produced coin-operated video games ever. And so it just became a quest to own the origin of things and really get into it. So that's kind of where it all started.
What was the first arcade cabinet you bought? That wasn't a multi-game.
Well, I like to say I forget, but I think I remember. It was a Asteroids Deluxe, empty cabinet. And, this is why I often excuse beginning collectors who are getting into the hobby if they want to stick a main machine or a multi-board in anything. We're like, no, don't do that to classics. Well, of course, it wasn't quite a classic then. But you just don't know. And I think it was a gutted, it was a gutted Asteroids Deluxe I picked up and converted into a multi-machine. And then within, I'd like to say, 2-3 years of collecting, when I really got a sense of the history of it, it was converted right back into a Asteroids Deluxe.
About how many games do you have in your collection right now?
It tends to vary, and they're not all here at the house. You know what? We were at the airport at my hangar, and I've got another storage hangar around the corner. I forgot to show you the Yem and Boneyard. The game's yet to be restored. We got to do that next time. Right now I've got, in between pinball, video, slot machine, all that, and what's in the it's like 50 games or somewhere around there, Sometimes it's a little more, sometimes a little less. I just got rid of a game and added a game, moved a game downstairs, so it fluctuates, But I don't buy games ever with the mindset of selling them. It's just when something that much more must-have comes along that I finally do actually. There's certainly, this is never getting sold. That's never getting sold. That's never getting sold. Okay, move Pac-Man downstairs, move Tron in. It varies, but it's in flux, shall we say.
If you had to pick one game out of your collection here as your favorite, which one would it be?
Oh boy, favorite one category. And I not to be difficult, but when you think about it, right? Favorite historical game? Well, no doubt, computer space, right? Favorite for gameplay? Maybe Galaga. You know, because even mediocre gamers like myself can do that. I'm really good at fixing these things. I'm not so good at playing them. I can restore the hell out of any game. Fixing it, that's another issue. I mean, playing it. Something, yeah. You know, it's been a very long day. Yeah, so in terms of the franchise, probably Terminator, because I'm a big Terminator fan. Sci-fi, you know, and I always thought the Terminator was never given its due compared to, say, Star Wars or Star Trek, you know. So my Terminator 2 coin-op video game, my Terminator 2 pinball, maybe those in terms of the franchise, you know. Of course, you know, both of us being big Kiss fans, Kiss pinballs, that, you know. And in terms of, well, also historical importance, Pinball 2000, you know, Revenge from Mars. That was a moment in history, you know.
That's where they combined the video.
Yep, successfully. But you know what? I have its unsuccessful cousin right next to it, which is Baby Pac-Man. But still, beloved. You know what? I mean, my friend, how did he put it? You know, Jersey Jack and Jersey Jack Pinball. He said, it's a bad video game combined with a bad pinball. You know, it's like a nerdy chick wearing cute glasses. Something does it. It somehow works for you. You know? Yeah, somehow works. You know, it's got its own charm.
Where do you find most of your games?
Man, that's something that has changed and continues to evolve over the years as well. It started off as auctions, you know. When Craigslist and eBay really kind of came into the swing of it, I added those two. And then later on, when it became less of filling the bulk, you know, the bulk of your collection, right? Okay, you know, you gotta have a Moon Patrol, you gotta have a Donkey Kong, you can find those at auction or Craigslist. When it became more specialized stuff, it became fellow collectors and, you know, now it's a mix of all the above. You know, the game is where you find it. So I would recommend to beginners, you know, check for arcade auctions in your area, check Craigslist, get active on our forums, RetroGamingRoundup.com, get active on KLOV, and the best kept secret out there is a lot of the pinball guys refuse to go to forums. They, you know, like the Lotus Group, Lotus Cars, those guys refuse to leave email lists. They still use email lists. They don't have forums. They don't even have news groups, right? The pinball guys all stayed on Rec Games Pinball in the news groups, which Google built a cheesy front end for and then called Google Groups, like they invented it, right? So yeah, I mean, check out, you know, Rec Games Pinball. You'll find stuff in the news group and the difference too is whether you find collector prices or retail prices, right? We collectors know what we have, we know what it's worth. We sell to each other at fair prices because we're all friends, right? So a good example of this would be home gaming stores. Usually a very bad deal. There are some exemptions. I'll tell you one off the bat, no business affiliation with the guy. Is Randy Paris, who owns Game Room Deals in Manassas, Virginia. Super nice guy, sells at good, honest prices. Most game room stores are not the case. Most game room stores, what they do is they buy for $800, add a 1 and a comma in front of the price, and do nothing to the game. Literally. And then, you know, Sally Soccer Mom walks there. Oh, well, look, I didn't know I could buy a Pac-Man. Phil will love that in his basement. Here's my, you know, card. And she walks out of her $1,800 thinking she got a deal. It's worth $400, you know. So, yeah, you know, it's more of, you know, combining all resources, you know, looking in all places at all times. And the rare stuff, when it comes up, it's gone. You know, you've got to be on the spot and be ready to move. I don't got notes.
Yeah, when you showed up, it was full. Now you got done. Pretty damn close.
Pretty dang close.
Mr. Rescue the fair princess from the clutches of an evil pirate. You control the actions of a daring adventurer finding his way to the castle.
Checking the radio. That's the shit right there. According to Scott. It's like the first one or something.
Yep.
My God, it's full of stars.
Nobody asked.
The last night he was beer. No. We were working on
So there's 3 different home arcades that I visited this week. Thanks for watching the video, and game on.
Thanks for watching.